After years of making PlayStation content, people always ask me the same question. What games should I actually buy? So I made this list. No corporate picks, no games I'm sponsored to promote. Just 18 games that genuinely blew me away. Whether you're new to PS5 or a veteran looking for hidden gems, trust me on these. Listen, Guerrilla Games looked at their robot dinosaur game and said, let's make it bigger. And somehow they actually pulled it off. You're still Aloy, still shooting arrows at mechanical T-Rexes, but now you can explore underwater ruins and glide across the map. The world is absolutely massive, maybe too massive if I'm being honest, because there's stuff to do everywhere and sometimes you just want to focus on the main story. Speaking of which, the story gets weird with all this ancient tech and forbidden knowledge stuff, but the combat? Chef's kiss. Taking down a Thunderjaw never gets old. They added new machines that are genuinely challenging, not the fake difficulty where enemies just become damage sponges. The graphics are stunning. This is one of those games that makes you stop and take screenshots, even when you're in the middle of fighting for your life. My only real complaint is that it feels a bit safe, you know? It's a very polished, very expensive sequel that does everything right but doesn't take many risks. It's like getting an A+ on your homework, but not learning anything surprising. Still, if you liked Zero Dawn, this is more of what you loved with better visuals and tighter combat. Just be ready to spend 50+ hours if you actually want to see everything. You play as a cat. That's it. That's the pitch. And somehow that's enough to make one of the most interesting games on PS5. You're a little orange tabby trying to survive in a city full of robots who miss humans so much they built their own society. The whole game is about exploring this cyberpunk world from a cat's perspective, which means you can knock stuff off shelves, scratch carpets, and meow at robots who will absolutely stop what they're doing to pet you. It's adorable, but also kind of sad because this world is empty of people, and these robots are just trying to remember what life used to be like. The platforming is simple. You jump where the game tells you to jump, but that's fine because the real star is the world itself. Every area tells a story without beating you over the head with exposition. You've got your little robot companion who translates for you, and together you're solving environmental puzzles that actually make sense. The game is short, maybe 5 or 6 hours, but it doesn't overstay its welcome. No filler, no grinding, just a focused experience from start to finish. This is what happens when a developer actually listens to what players want. The first Helldivers was this top-down shooter that had a cult following, and instead of just making Helldivers 1.5, they made it third person, made it gorgeous, and kept all the chaos that made the original special. You and 3 friends drop onto planets to spread managed democracy, which is just space fascism with better marketing, and everything that can go wrong will go wrong. Your teammate will call in an airstrike on your position. You'll accidentally shoot your friend in the back. Someone will trigger a patrol and suddenly you're running for your life. It's friendly fire, the game, and it's fantastic. What really impressed me is how they handled the live service stuff. No premium currency, no loot boxes. Just a battle pass that you can actually complete by playing the game. When servers got overloaded at launch, the devs were honest about it instead of corporate speak. The shooting feels weighty, the explosions are satisfying, and coordinating with your squad when everything is going sideways creates these amazing stories. This is how you do games as a service without being greedy. Capcom looked at Street Fighter V's disaster launch and said, "Never again." And they meant it. This is the most complete fighting game package in years. You've got World Tour mode where you create your character and wander around Metro City learning moves from Street Fighter legends. It's bizarre, but surprisingly fun. You've got the classic arcade mode. You've got a story mode that's actually entertaining. And the online actually works at launch. Revolutionary concept, I know. The modern control scheme is brilliant because it lets new players do cool combos without spending weeks in training mode, while pros can still use classic controls for maximum depth. Everyone wins. The drive system replaced focus attacks and V-triggers with something that's easier to understand but has crazy depth once you learn it. My biggest praise is that this feels like a fighting game designed for humans, not just tournament players. The tutorials actually teach you how to play instead of assuming you already know frame data. The ranked system doesn't make you feel terrible for losing. This is Capcom firing on all cylinders, proving they still know how to make a proper fighting game. Polyphony Digital spent years making this game, and you can feel every hour of that development time. This is Car Worship, the video game. The menus look like a luxury car showroom. Every vehicle is modeled with obsessive detail. The driving physics are so precise that you can tell the difference between tire compounds. If you love cars, this is basically automotive meditation. The campaign takes you through the history of motorsports while you collect vehicles and tune them to perfection. The problem? It launched with always online requirements and an economy designed to sell you microtransactions in a $70 game. A game that's supposed to be the pinnacle of racing simulation, and they wanted you to grind for hours or pull out your credit card? They've patched it since launch, made the economy less insulting, but that initial decision showed their priorities. When you're actually racing, when you're taking a perfectly tuned car through a corner at the absolute limit of grip, this game is unmatched. But getting to those moments requires patience and tolerance for Polyphony's outdated design choices. Supergiant Games took roguelikes and made them actually make sense. You're Zagreus, son of Hades, trying to escape the underworld. And every time you die, which will be a lot, you wake up back home and your dad roasts you for failing. Then you try again. What makes this special is that dying isn't frustrating because the story continues between runs. You'll chat with other gods, unlock new dialogue, romance characters, and slowly piece together why Zagreus is so desperate to leave. The combat is fast and fluid, letting you mix weapons with godly powers in ways that feel different every run. Maybe you get Zeus lightning, or Aphrodite's damage boost, or Dionysus making enemies drunk. Every combination changes how you play. The voice acting is phenomenal, the art style is gorgeous, and there's so much content that even after 50 hours you're still finding new interactions. This isn't some indie game asking for patience while it gets good. It's polished from minute one. The only downside is once you've beaten it a few times and seen most story beats, the magic fades a bit. But getting to that point takes dozens of hours, so you definitely get your money's worth. This is the game that proved roguelikes don't have to be punishing slogs for hardcore players only. Housemarque made bullet hell shooters for years, got really good at it, then decided to make Dark Souls meets Alien with time loops. You're Celine, an astronaut stuck on a hostile planet where every death resets everything but you keep your memories. The story is genuinely unsettling, full of psychological horror and mystery that keeps you guessing. The combat is absolutely brutal. Enemies fill the screen with projectiles and you need to dodge through patterns while landing shots. It demands your full attention every second. No pausing mid-run to check your phone. When it launched, the game had no save system for runs, meaning you either finished or lost hours of progress. They patched that after players rightfully complained, but it showed how out of touch they were with reality. The procedural generation means every run feels different, but it also means sometimes you get garbage layouts with no good items. The difficulty is no joke. This game will humble you repeatedly. But when you finally master a weapon, learn enemy patterns, and make it through a biome without taking damage, you feel like an absolute legend. It's gorgeous, runs at 60 FPS with ray tracing, and the DualSense features make every gun feel unique. Just know what you're getting into. This is punishing, often unfair, and doesn't care about your time. Insomniac looked at the PS5's SSD and asked, what if we made loading screens illegal? The result is a game where you jump between dimensions instantly. No loading, no tricks, just straight up technical wizardry. You're playing as Ratchet and new character Rivet, hopping through portals while fighting robots with weapons that are genuinely creative. Forget boring machine guns, you get a gun that turns enemies into plants, another that spawns a disco party, and the pixelizer that makes everything look like retro games. The story is surprisingly heartfelt, dealing with themes about accepting yourself and found family without being preachy. Rivet is a great addition. Basically Ratchet from a dimension where things went wrong, and her chemistry with the cast works. Visually, this is a showpiece. It looks like a Pixar movie you can play. The problem is it's pretty safe. Insomniac perfected this formula years ago, and Rift Apart doesn't really mess with it. You're running through gorgeous levels, collecting bolts, shooting stuff, doing light platforming. It's all very polished, but there's no risks taken. The game is also pretty short, maybe 12 hours, and once you beat it, there's not much reason to return unless you're a completionist. Still, as a demonstration of what PS5 can do, it's spectacular. Bluepoint took the game that started the Souls genre and rebuilt it from scratch with graphics that look unreal. This is a full remake, not a remaster, meaning everything looks gorgeous while the brutal difficulty remains untouched. If you've never played a Souls game, here's what you need to know. You will die constantly, lose your progress, and the game will not hold your hand. There's no map, no quest markers, just you figuring things out through exploration and pain. The combat requires patience. Every swing matters, every dodge needs timing, and rushing in gets you killed. What makes Demon's Souls special compared to later Souls games is how experimental it feels. The world tendency system changes difficulty based on your actions. Some levels are gimmicky in ways from software abandoned later. Tower of Latria is still one of the creepiest locations in gaming. The bosses range from legendary fights like Flame Lurker to complete jokes like Dragon God. Bluepoint's remake adds nothing new to the design, which disappointed some fans hoping for new content. But they nailed the atmosphere. The sound design is incredible, the visuals are haunting, and dying to the same boss for the 10th time somehow feels fair. This is a museum piece, a perfect preservation of a classic with a new coat of paint. Atlus took the Persona formula to a fantasy world and somehow made it work. You're fighting to save a kingdom through a popularity contest while battling monsters and navigating political intrigue. The battle system mixes real-time action with turn-based strategy, letting you handle weak enemies quickly but forcing you to think during real fights. The social link system is here, but instead of hanging out with high school friends, you're building relationships with party members during a road trip across the kingdom. The story tackles heavy themes about prejudice and inequality without being subtle. This game has opinions and isn't shy about sharing them. The art style is phenomenal, very Persona-like, but with its own identity. Medieval fantasy mixed with Atlus's signature style creates something that looks like nothing else. My issue is the pacing drags in the middle, with dungeons that overstay their welcome and story beats that could have been tightened up. The game is also massive. We're talking 80+ hours for the main story. That's great for value, but exhausting when some sections feel padded. The English voice acting is surprisingly good, which matters because there's a lot of dialogue. If you loved Persona 5, this is basically that, but fantasy. If you bounced off Persona, this won't convert you. Square Enix took the Midgar section from Remake, looked at the entire world of Final Fantasy VII, and said, let's make all of that. This is the middle chapter of their trilogy, and it's massive. We're talking 60+ hours if you just do the main story. Way more if you're a completionist. You're following Cloud and the gang as they chase Sephiroth across the planet, visiting iconic locations that fans remember from 1997 but completely reimagined. The combat system is even better than Remake, giving each character unique abilities and letting you swap between them mid-fight. Exploring the world is where opinions split. There's tons of side content, maybe too much, with towers to climb and minigames that range from fun to like chow, why is this here? The story gets weird because they're not just remaking the original anymore, they're changing major events and adding new timeline stuff that even longtime fans are confused about. Aerith's fate is now a mystery instead of a certainty. The graphics are stunning when you're in story moments, but the open areas show the engine struggling with pop-in and texture loading. My biggest complaint is how they're stretching this out. The original game fit on one disc, now we're getting 3 full-priced games over several years. It feels like they're padding for profit. Still, if you're invested in this version of the story, Rebirth delivers spectacular set pieces and character moments. Remedy Entertainment made a sequel 13 years later and somehow it's worth the wait. This isn't just Alan Wake with better graphics, they evolved everything. You play as 2 characters. Alan stuck in a nightmare dimension writing his way out, and Saga, an FBI agent investigating murders connected to his books. The game switches between them and both stories are equally compelling. Remedy went full survival horror this time, meaning resources are limited, combat is tense, and you're genuinely scared when enemies show up. The flashlight combat returns, but now, ammo actually matters and running away is often the smart choice. What makes this special is how meta it gets. Alan is literally writing the story you're playing, questioning what's real, and the game plays with narrative structure in ways that would be pretentious if Remedy wasn't so good at it. The live-action sequences blend with gameplay seamlessly, creating this unsettling vibe where you're never quite sure what's happening. Visually, this might be the best-looking game on PS5, with lighting that creates constant dread. The problem is, it's slow. Really slow. The first few hours are a lot of walking and talking before things get crazy. And the ending sets up a sequel, so if you wanted closure, tough luck. This is an artistic achievement that proves games can be genuinely artistic without sacrificing fun. Capcom remade a game that didn't need remaking and somehow justified it. The original Resident Evil 4 revolutionized gaming in 2005, and this remake keeps everything that worked while fixing everything that aged poorly. Leon is still fighting through a village of infected cultists to save the president's daughter, but now the story is darker, the characters have actual depth, and Ashley isn't annoying. That alone is a miracle. The combat keeps that same tense feel where every bullet counts, but they modernized it with crafting, stealth options, and parrying mechanics that feel great. The Mercenaries mode is back, and it's as addictive as ever. What impresses me is how they restructured levels while keeping the spirit intact. The castle section is shorter and better paced. The island finale doesn't overstay its welcome. They cut some of the goofier elements, and while purists complained, the remake is tighter for it. The bosses are genuinely challenging without being cheap. The knife durability system adds tension. My only gripe is they made it slightly easier overall, probably to appeal to modern audiences who expect more forgiving games. But the unlock system rewards replays, the new game plus is substantial, and the free DLC actually adds value instead of being cut content sold back to you. This is how you remake a classic, respect the original, but don't be afraid to improve. Insomniac said, "What if both Spider-Men and made it work better than anyone expected?" You're switching between Peter Parker and Miles Morales as they deal with Kraven hunting supervillains in New York and the Venom symbiote turning Peter into an aggressive jerk. The story is genuinely great, balancing two protagonists without making one feel like a sidekick. Miles gets his moment to shine, Peter goes through actual character development, and the Venom arc is handled better than most Spider-Man movies. The swinging is perfection. They added web wings so you can glide between buildings, making traversal even more fun. Combat evolved from the first game with new abilities and the symbiote powers that make Peter play differently. The side content is the usual open-world checklist stuff, but it's Spider-Man, so even collecting backpacks is enjoyable. The city feels alive with random crimes and activities. My criticism is it plays it safe. This is basically Spider-Man 1.5 with a new story. They didn't reinvent anything, just polished what worked. The game is also shorter than expected, maybe 18 hours for the main story, which feels weird for a full-priced release. And once you beat it, there's not much reason to keep playing unless you're chasing trophies. But as a Spider-Man power fantasy, this is unmatched. The boss fights are spectacular, the emotional beats land, and the ending sets up interesting possibilities for a third game. Santa Monica looked at God of War 2018's perfect ending and said, "Actually, we need a sequel." Ragnarok continues Kratos and Atreus' story as they prepare for the Norse apocalypse. And it's bigger, louder, and longer than the first game. Maybe too much longer. The combat is fantastic, with new weapons and abilities that make fights feel fresh, even 30 hours in. The Leviathan axe still feels incredible to throw and recall. The story takes you across all 9 realms, showing parts of Norse mythology the first game only hinted at. The cast is excellent. Every god, giant, and dwarf is well written and performed. The problem is pacing. The first game was tight, focused, and emotionally resonant. Ragnarok is sprawling, with multiple storylines happening simultaneously and side content that interrupts the main narrative flow. There's a section in the middle that drags on forever. The relationship between Kratos and Atreus is still the heart of the story, watching this god learn to be a father while his son grows into his own person. The ending is satisfying and actually wraps things up instead of sequel baiting. Visually, it's stunning, but doesn't look dramatically better than the previous game since it also runs on PS4. The accessibility options are incredible, letting players customize almost everything. This is a technical masterpiece that respects player time with great quality of life features. It just needed a better editor to trim the fat and tighten the story. Larian Studios spent years in early access listening to feedback, and they delivered one of the best RPGs ever made. This is Dungeons & Dragons translated into a video game so faithfully that tabletop players feel right at home, while newcomers aren't lost. You create your character, get infected with a Mind Flayer parasite, and then the game just opens up. You can approach every situation dozens of ways. Talk your way out, sneak around, start fights, or find completely bizarre solutions the developers somehow accounted for. The writing is phenomenal, with companions who feel like real people with their own agendas and problems. Shadowheart, Astarion, Garlock, they're not just following you around, they're reacting to your choices and judging you for it. The turn-based combat uses actual D&D rules, which means it's complex but fair. You need to think tactically, use the environment, and sometimes accept that the dice will screw you over. The game is absolutely massive. One playthrough takes 80+ hours and you'll miss entire storylines. The reactivity is insane, with the game remembering choices from 40 hours ago and bringing them back. My only complaints are technical. The third act gets buggy, performance drops in the city, and some quest lines feel rushed compared to the polish of Act 1 and 2. But this is the new standard for RPGs. Every other developer is looking at Baldur's Gate 3, wondering how they're supposed to compete with this level of depth and player freedom. From Software took Dark Souls and gave it an open world, which sounds terrible on paper, but somehow works. You're in the lands between, a fantasy world that's equal parts beautiful and horrifying, and you can go basically anywhere from the start. See that castle in the distance? You can walk there right now and get demolished by enemies way above your level. The game doesn't care about your feelings. What makes this different from other Souls games is the freedom. If you're stuck on a boss, you can leave, explore somewhere else, level up, and come back stronger. No more bashing your head against the same wall for hours. The world is filled with secrets, from hidden dungeons to optional bosses that are harder than the main story. The combat is classic Souls. Deliberate, punishing, and satisfying when you finally beat something that killed you 20 times. The story is typically from Software cryptic, with George R.R. Martin contributing to the lore, though you'd never know it because everything is told through item descriptions and environmental storytelling. The boss quality varies wildly. Some are all-time greats, others are reused mini-bosses that feel like padding. The game is huge, maybe too huge, because the open world means lots of empty space between interesting content. And the late game difficulty spikes into ridiculous territory with bosses that feel designed to sell spirit ash summons. Still, this is a landmark achievement that proved open world Souls could work. Just prepare to die. A lot. Team Asobi made a game that reminds you why you fell in love with gaming in the first place. This is pure joy in video game form, a 3D platformer where you're a little robot rescuing his friends across creative, inventive levels that constantly surprise you. Every world introduces new mechanics, whether you're controlling a giant frog, manipulating time, or using the dual sense in ways that actually enhance gameplay instead of feeling like gimmicks. The haptic feedback and adaptive triggers are used perfectly here, making you feel textures and actions through the controller. This is the best showcase for DualSense features, better than any other PS5 game. The level design is genius. Nothing overstays its welcome. There's always something new around the corner, and the difficulty curve is perfect for all ages. It's accessible enough for kids, but has challenge for adults chasing collectibles. The PlayStation references are everywhere, celebrating gaming history without being obnoxious about it. You'll find nods to everything from Uncharted to obscure Japan-only titles. My only criticism is it's not very long. You can beat it in maybe 10, 12 hours, which feels short for a full-priced game. But every minute is quality. There's no filler, no padding, just expertly crafted platforming. This is proof that games don't need to be 100-hour epics or have massive budgets to be special. Sometimes you just need tight controls, creative ideas, and developers who understand fun. So, there you have it, 18 games that actually justify owning a PS5. Look, the industry is full of half-baked releases and greedy monetization schemes, but these games, they got it right. Whether you grab one or all 18, you're getting quality over the usual corporate garbage. If you disagree with my picks, cool. Tell me in the comments which games I'm wrong about. And if this saved you from wasting money on mediocre games, hit that subscribe button. I'll keep calling out the good, the bad, and the overpriced. See you in the next one.